My girlfriend Sarah and I decided we wanted a different kind of anniversary that year. We live in a chaotic city, and after months of intense work, all we wanted was a break. The idea of renting a secluded cabin popped up out of nowhere, but it seemed perfect. We found an Airbnb in an isolated area, surrounded by forest and far from any neighbors. The owner assured us the place was safe and ideal for those looking for peace and quiet. As soon as we arrived, we felt the calm of being away from everything, just the two of us, surrounded by the sound of the wind and the smell of damp earth. On our first night, we built a campfire and enjoyed the starry sky, laughing and talking about everything. But on the second day, something strange happened. After a walk through the forest, we came back inside and saw a pair of muddy boots in the entryway that weren't ours. They were there, leaving marks on the wooden floor that I knew we hadn't made. Sarah thought they might belong to the owner, but I was sure they hadn't been there before. The detail that made me shiver was the fact that the boots were still wet, as if someone had just used them. We tried to ignore it, but something inside me couldn't fully relax. During dinner, I noticed Sarah was restless too, constantly glancing at the door. And then, as if the universe wanted to mess with us, we found something else, an old jacket thrown over the couch. It was a gray, heavy coat with worn fabric and a strange smell, a mix of mold and something sharper, almost metallic. I knew that hadn't been there when we left in the morning, but I didn't want to scare Sarah, so I said that maybe the owner had left some things around the house and we hadn't noticed. But inside, I was feeling an intense chill. After that, we locked every door and window and decided to call the owner. I explained what was happening, but he seemed to think we were exaggerating, saying there was no one around and we had probably just missed those items before. Even as I tried to convince myself he might be right, the feeling that we weren't alone didn't go away. That night, we lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak, every slight sound from the old wood made my heart race. I looked over at Sarah, who was also awake, and realized we were both waiting for something, or someone. The night seemed to drag on, each minute more tense than the last. At one point, I heard footsteps outside, light, but unmistakably someone walking around the house. I got up slowly and went to the living room window, opening a small crack in the curtain. There was no one outside, just the dark forest, but the sound continued, as if the person knew exactly where to walk to stay out of sight. My stomach tightened, and I went back to the bedroom, trying not to alarm Sarah, who was staring at the door, clenching her hands. We decided to stay silent, each holding our breath at the slightest sound. Then we heard the sound of a key being inserted into the lock. It turned, but it didn't open. We had bolted it shut. Absolute silence fell over the house, and for a moment, I thought it might be in my head. But then the doorknob rattled again, harder, like someone was really trying to get inside. My skin prickled, and I felt an almost paralyzing panic. I whispered to Sarah to try calling the police, but our signal was completely out of range, which only added to our desperation. We spent what felt like an eternity in that tense silence, eyes fixed on the door and ears tuned to any movement. The rattling finally stopped, but the fear didn't fade. I felt on the edge of collapse, as if I were stuck in that moment of terror, not knowing what would happen next. Finally, the silence was broken by heavy footsteps, moving away slowly, fading toward the forest. We waited a little longer before we gathered the courage to check the entire house, each holding something we could use as a weapon. There was no sign of anyone, and the strange items, the boots and the jacket, were still there, proof that it really happened. The next morning, we packed up quickly and left without looking back. The Airbnb owner finally responded to our last message, apologizing and saying he would check on what could have happened. But honestly, we didn't want to know anymore. To this day, we have no idea who that person was or what they wanted with us. Sometimes, I wonder if it was just a lost traveler or someone with far darker intentions. And every time I remember that night, the feeling of dread comes back as if I were right there again, in that house, waiting for the next sound, the next attempt to break in. It was one of those stormy nights that felt like the sky was tearing apart. The rain was pounding against the windows so hard that each drop felt like a punch, and the thunder shook the house as if something colossal was raging outside. I'm a single mom, and back then, my kids were just 7 and 4 years old. We were all in the living room, wrapped up in blankets, trying to distract the kids from the noise outside. The power had been out since the evening, and we relied on a few scattered candles, which, honestly, made everything feel even creepier. I tried to keep calm for their sake, but there was something different about that night, more than just the storm, an unsettling feeling, like someone was watching us. Then I heard the first strange sound, a soft, rhythmic knock coming from the back door. At first, I thought it was just the wind tossing branches against the house. I mean, with that kind of wind, it was common to find branches all over the yard after a night like that. I took a deep breath, pulled my kids closer, and tried to ignore it. But a few minutes later, the sound came back, louder this time, followed by something that sounded like scratching. I looked over at the door, half expecting to see a branch or something like that, but all I saw was darkness. With each new knock, my heart seemed to beat in sync, and even though I didn't want to admit it, I started to worry that it wasn't just the wind. I tried to distract the kids with a story, something to calm them down, but my voice was shaking more than I'd like to admit. They were tense, and to be honest, so was I. It was as if the storm wasn't the only thing out there, but I kept trying to convince myself it was just fear getting the better of me, that I was overreacting. Then the sound came again, this time accompanied by a shadow I noticed moving past the kitchen window. It was something low to the ground, moving quickly, but it definitely wasn't a branch. My heart almost stopped, and a chill ran down my spine. I got up slowly, trying not to alarm the kids, and went to the window, but all I could see was the dark yard and the rain beating down on the earth. I decided it was time to check the back door. I picked up one of the candles, which was flickering just as much as my hands were, and started walking slowly down the hall. With each step, the sound grew louder, like that knocking had taken on a life of its own. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I took a deep breath and prepared to open it, but then I saw something that made me freeze. Footprints. In the mud, right near the door, there were barefoot prints, small but perfectly visible. They came from the yard and went around the side of the house. At that moment, I knew someone was out there, and it wasn't just the wind. My first impulse was to lock all the doors and windows, but to be honest, my head was racing. I knew calling the police was the best option, but with the storm knocking down power lines, we were isolated. My cell barely had any signal, and each attempt at a call dropped in seconds. I went from window to window, checking that everything was locked, while the kids, now picking up on my tension, started asking questions. I tried to stay calm, saying everything was fine, but my eyes kept darting to the back door. Each time lightning lit up the night, it felt like the footprints became even clearer, reminding me that someone was out there somewhere. I went back to the living room, trying to decide what to do. We just had to make it through the night, but every second felt like an eternity. The knocking and scratching continued, on and off, as if whoever was out there knew exactly how to scare us without showing themselves. Each new sound made my heart race, and I fought hard not to let the fear take over. At some point, as I turned to grab another candle, I heard one last loud knock, and then silence. Absolute silence. It felt like even the storm had stopped for a moment. I held my breath, waiting for something more, any sign that it was over, but the feeling that something was there, watching, wouldn't go away. After a few minutes, that stillness started feeling even more menacing. I decided to take one last look around the house to make sure everything was safe, even though my intuition was screaming at me not to leave the living room. With a small flashlight, I went to the back door and shone it into the yard. The rain was still falling hard, but when the light swept over the ground, I noticed that the footprints in the mud were now more scattered, as if whoever it was had come back and circled the house multiple times. Just then, I heard a slight creak coming from the side kitchen window. The curtain swayed slightly, and for a second, I thought it was the wind, until I realized the window was slightly open, even though I was sure I'd locked it before. I quickly shut the window and returned to the living room, where I stayed awake until dawn, unable to relax for even a second. When the sun finally started to rise and the storm began to die down, I went outside to check the footprints more closely. But to my shock, there was no trace of them anymore. It was like they'd never been there. I spent the day feeling on edge, trying to come up with a rational explanation, but to this day, I still don't know who or what was lurking around our house that night. After that, I added extra locks to all the doors and windows, and I've never felt at ease during a storm again. Something, or someone, was there, and no matter how hard I try, I can't shake the memory of those knocks and scratches at the door. At that time, I had just moved back to my parents' house after 2 years in college. It was a temporary situation, just until I could find a part-time job and save up enough money to rent a place of my own. My parents had converted the basement into a kind of independent apartment, with a small bathroom and even a makeshift kitchenette. For me, it was almost perfect. I had my privacy, I could come and go through the side door without disturbing anyone, and honestly, the quiet down there was a relief after the constant noise in the dorm. I started to enjoy those days of isolation, and that strangely calm routine became part of my everyday life. One of those nights, when everything seemed silent, I heard the first noise coming from the crawl space near the pipes. It was a faint sound, almost like something scraping against the walls, but I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just an old pipe or maybe even a rat. But over time, I noticed that the noises were more frequent, almost regular, as if something, or someone, was moving around down there. At first I brushed it off. I even joked with myself that I was just letting my imagination get the best of me. But things really started to change when I began noticing small items out of place, things I was sure about where I had left, only to find them moved later. It started subtly. First, it was my toothbrush, which I found on the opposite side of the sink from where I always left it. Then my wallet, which instead of being on the table next to my bed, was on the shelf across the room. I tried to convince myself that I was just distracted or too tired to remember where I'd put things. But as the days passed, the incidents became harder to ignore. One day, I came back from college and found my notebook, where I took all my class notes, with a few pages crumpled and turned, as if someone had flipped through it. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept trying to rationalize it. I mean, who would sneak into a basement just to mess with random stuff like that? Things got a lot more disturbing the night I came down to the basement after a night out with friends and noticed something strange near the small window up near the ceiling. The window led outside, but it was high enough that it seemed impossible for anyone to easily access it. That's when I saw handprints on the wall, right under it, with fresh mud stains. I froze. It was as if someone had forced their way in through the window and crawled inside. Just imagining it sent a cold chill down my spine. At that moment, the reality of the situation hit me. I was alone, trapped in a basement with a tiny window as the only quick way out, and the thought that someone might have found a way in made me stay on high alert. I stood there for a while, analyzing the handprints, trying to figure out how someone could have squeezed in. The basement was cramped, full of old boxes and furniture, and no matter how much I looked, I couldn't find a place where someone could be hiding. But the feeling that I wasn't alone was inescapable. My heart raced as I checked every corner, almost expecting to find someone there, watching me from the shadows. The night barely passed after that. I locked myself in the bedroom within the basement, but every little sound made me jump out of bed. Every creak, every wall crackle, felt like a sign that something was lurking. By morning, I decided I had to do something about it. I tried talking to my parents about what happened, but they thought I was exaggerating, blaming it on study stress, even suggesting it might be some prank. Unsatisfied, I wedged a chair under the door handle that night and used an improvised lock on the basement window. I was determined not to be caught off guard again, but deep down, I knew none of it eased the feeling that someone was already nearby, watching. The next night, when the silence felt almost absolute, I was woken up by a heavy sound, like something dragging across the floor. My heart raced, and for a few seconds I stayed still, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the sound continued. It was a slow, rhythmic dragging, coming directly from the hallway leading to the entrance. I barely breathed as I tried to listen more closely, and that's when I heard a sigh, low and raspy, followed by a faint scratch on the doorknob. My body froze while my mind struggled to process what was happening. Someone was there, trying to get in. Somehow, I found the strength to get out of bed in complete silence and went to the door. I pressed my ear against the wood and felt a chill run down my spine. On the other side, there was soft, steady breathing, almost as if the person was waiting for something or someone. After a few minutes of pure tension, the sound started to fade away until it was completely gone. I stood there, motionless, for a long time before mustering the courage to look out the window. I didn't see anyone, but the handprints were back, clearer this time, as if someone had pressed their muddy fingers against the glass, leaving a haunting reminder of a presence that somehow kept coming back to that place. The next day, I decided I couldn't go on like this. I set up a small, improvised alarm system on the door and some areas near the window, using string and metal cans that would make noise if anyone tried to get in again. I spent the day nervous, each movement feeling like preparation for something I knew might be inevitable. Deep down, part of me hoped nothing would happen, that all of this had just been a mix of coincidences and paranoia. But as night fell, my anxiety returned in full force. It was already late when I heard the cans clatter to the floor. The noise echoed through the basement, snapping me out of sleep in an instant. I ran to the door and turned on the lights, but when I got there, I found no one. The string was cut, and the cans scattered across the floor. The only thing left was a final handprint on the window, but this time there was something different. In the center of it, a small piece of paper was stuck. I carefully took the paper, trying to stay calm, and saw a message written in smudged letters, as if written in a hurry. "I know you're here." After that, I didn't wait another minute. I packed my things that same night and moved back upstairs with my parents. We never found out who or what it was, but after everything I went through, all I know is I never want to be alone in that basement again. I've been working as a librarian for over 5 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that places filled with books seem to have a life of their own. This might sound like something only a bookworm would say, but you start noticing strange things when you're alone in these quiet spaces. That night, as usual, I was responsible for closing the library. It was nearly 9 o'clock, and all I wanted was to finish tidying up the shelves and turning off the lights. Normally, everything is quiet, almost like a whisper. But that night, right after I heard the last click from switching off the lights upstairs, I noticed a different sound. Footsteps, small, distant, like they were coming from the basement. At first, I brushed it off, thinking my mind was playing tricks on me. Everyone gets those momentary paranoias when they're alone, right? But those footsteps, they didn't stop. They seemed to come and go, almost in a regular rhythm, like someone was walking between the shelves down below. Then, to make matters worse, as I passed the fiction section, I noticed a few books on the floor. It happens sometimes, but the weird part was that they were arranged in a strange way, almost forming a line, like someone had done it on purpose. A shiver ran down my spine, but I tried to keep calm, telling myself it must just be a coincidence. I took a deep breath and decided to check the basement, just to get rid of the feeling that something was wrong. I grabbed the flashlight I always keep at the counter and went down the stairs, one step at a time, the light shaking in my hands. The library basement is an old place, almost always damp, filled with dusty shelves and boxes that probably haven't been opened in years. The further down I went, the louder the footsteps became. It was a rhythmic sound, but different, like someone was dragging their feet or had a slight difficulty walking. The sound was coming from behind one of the last shelves at the back, and when I reached it, I stopped for a second, trying to listen more closely. Nothing. Just silence. But that silence was heavy, suffocating, like the entire room was holding its breath with me. Still standing there, I felt a strange impulse, a mixture of fear and curiosity. I swept the flashlight around, lighting up the dusty shelves and forgotten boxes. And then my eyes fell on something that shouldn't have been there. More books scattered on the floor, arranged in another strange pattern, almost forming a circle this time. It was like someone was leaving a message, a trail. But for what? I started questioning my sanity, trying to convince myself that no one else was there, that maybe a book had slipped, that the wind, or whatever it was, had caused that mess. But a part of me knew that didn't make sense. The library was completely closed off, with no windows in the basement, and those books seemed like they'd been moved intentionally. I was already on edge, but I tried convincing myself it was just exhaustion. I started picking up the books from the floor, and as I put them back on the shelves, I heard a subtle noise, almost imperceptible. A muffled murmur that seemed to come from some dark corner of the basement. I froze for a few seconds, holding the last book, trying to hear more clearly. The sound was faint, like someone talking to themselves, maybe whispering words I couldn't understand. The feeling of being watched intensified. My heart started racing, and the air around me felt heavier, as if something invisible was there, waiting for me to make the next move. It was as if the basement itself was trying to warn me, telling me I wasn't alone. Almost desperately, I turned and started up the stairs. But as soon as I took the first step, I heard a loud noise, something that sounded like a book hitting the floor with a hard thud, echoing throughout the basement. My feet froze. The flashlight trembled in my hand, and every shadow seemed to take shape, almost dancing around me. I looked back, but the hallway was empty, just darkness. At that moment, an absurd idea crossed my mind. What if I really wasn't alone there? What if someone, or something, had been watching me since I turned off the lights upstairs? I didn't know whether to run or confront whatever it was. But something inside me told me that if I didn't leave immediately, I might never get out. I decided it wasn't worth the risk. I climbed the stairs as fast as I could, without looking back, each step taking me farther from that suffocating basement. When I reached the main floor, the library looked different, even quieter and darker, as if it had become part of the mystery. I slammed the basement door shut, listening to the metallic echo reverberate down the empty hallways. That sound brought me a small sense of relief, but I could still feel the presence, as if something had been trapped behind that door, perhaps watching my every move until now. I rushed to the counter and grabbed my phone, ready to call security. But before I could dial, I heard one last sound coming from the basement. It was subtle, almost like a sigh, as if someone on the other side was saying goodbye. I left the library that night without looking back, my hands still shaking as I locked the front door. The next day, I told my supervisor everything, and he insisted on inspecting the basement. They found nothing, of course, but to this day, I still wonder what really happened there. I never heard those footsteps again or saw books scattered like that. But every time I pass by that basement door, I feel a strange chill go down my spine, as if something is there, silently waiting for the next time someone, alone, closes up the library after dark. Since then, I've made sure never to stay late again, but I can't help wondering, did whatever I encountered that night stay in the basement, or did it follow me out?